Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Graham Donovan from St. Paul United Methodist Church on Bardstown Road in the Highlands, one of your hosts for tonight. Welcome to the fourth presentation of Real Good News. We're going to take a few minutes to sign in the remaining people who've registered for the program. And while we're doing that, let's listen to a song by John Gage, who has generously supported all our programs of Real Good News. John's latest recording, Circles of Our Lives, features 9 original songs. I think we have this song on recording, and I'll be back after John's song to introduce tonight's program. Let's listen.
I live on a big blue ball. I never do dream I might fall. But even the day that I do, I'll jump off and smile back at you. I don't even know where we are. They tell us we're circling a star. Celestial creatures of light. We're children of love, shining bright. We walk where evening shadows wash the shore, with radiant sunsets pure as gold. Divine love shines in starlight evermore. Creation's power and beauty unfold. We're learning as children to let go, surrender to the sacred river's flow, looking within for what we know. Spirit will guide us as we grow. We're riding the big blue ball. We never do dream we might fall. Universal love surrounds us all, sustaining all creatures, great and small. Oh, la la la, la la la, la la la. We live on a big blue ball, and universal love surrounds us all.
Thank you, John. Hello again. Welcome to the fourth presentation of Real Good News from the 100% Renewable Energy Alliance of Louisville. We're very pleased to have you with us tonight. We're here to learn more about how Louisville is going to revolutionize the way we power our city. In February 2020, the Metro Council adopted a resolution that calls for 100% clean, renewable electricity in all Metro government operations by 2030 and 100% clean, renewable energy for all Metro government operations by 2035 and 100% clean, renewable energy for the entire Metro community. That's all of us, residences, businesses by 2040. These are big challenges. They need bold action. With them, Louisville joins other cities across the nation, pledging to reduce carbon emissions and to address the urgent climate crisis we're facing across the globe. Tonight, we'll widen our focus to actions we need to take at the state level in Kentucky to advance the Metro program here in Louisville. Tonight we're going to hear from Margaret Stewart and Sam Avery of 100% Real about what we need to do at the state level to advance the Metro plan for powering the city. And we'll also hear from Lane Boldman, Executive Director of the Kentucky Conservation Committee, one of the volunteer groups in the Alliance working hard to build green energy solutions. We're also pleased, we hope, to welcome Andy McDonald, Director of Earth Tools and Apogee Climate and Energy Transitions, who, among other things, helped develop Kentucky's net metering law and statewide interconnection guidelines. We'll also hear from Dr. Catherine Clement, a member of Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, about how decisions are made at state level about renewable energy matters. Among other things, I hope, describing the Public Service Commission, which is an important state player. I want to thank Paul Westland, who is handling the technical aspects of our broadcast tonight and monitoring questions in the chat room. He may introduce those questions from time to time. Now, let me just say a word about that. We want to give you plenty of chances to ask questions. You'll see a chat icon at the bottom of your screens in the middle, the green icon there. Please click on it at any time and type in any questions you have. Please keep yourself muted unless we give you the go-ahead to ask your question directly. But please turn on your video if you're comfortable doing so the speakers can see you. It inspires them to know they're talking to real people. I'd like now to give a special welcome to Elisa Owen, who has just taken over as the Executive Director of Kentucky Interfaith Power and Light, which I'm calling here KIPL, K-I-P-L, a co-sponsor of this Real Good News broadcast. Elisa has worked on the economics of international electrical energy regulation and on sustainability initiatives in Louisville. She is an ordained Presbyterian minister. Elisa, please tell us how KIPL's priorities are shaping up. I think you're muted, Elisa. Can you unmute?
I think I'm unmuted now. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for letting me speak to you briefly this evening. I just wanted to share with you that one of the things that we are doing as KIPL since I've arrived is working to consider whether or not we need to put forth a shareholder resolution at LG&E's spring meeting. I don't know how many of you all have been following the kind of shareholder action that have encouraged big companies to take notice of community priorities like BP, like Exxon, like GE in this past week. But some of these actions have been successful. In order to bring them about, you can't just be somebody like you and me. You have to be somebody who owns at least $2,000 of LG&E stock, and you have to have owned it for at least a year. We have identified someone that we think has that much and would be willing to make one of our groups, whether it's Kipple or not, I don't know, but it will be one of our groups, a proxy to bring a resolution to file that resolution by December the 8th. And then if it gets approved by the SEC, to put it on the ballot for LG&E's spring meeting in the spring. I want you to know that this is a priority of Kipple's, because we know that in order to do our work of helping religious communities get their carbon footprints to zero, we need a cooperative utility. And so we want to put them on notice that we expect that from them and we want that from them. I would prefer not to bring a resolution to their annual meeting. I would prefer to convince them that they need an advisory committee for renewable energy like they have for demand side management. But we're going to continue developing the shareholder resolution in case they don't find it in their interest to speak to us before we put that on the floor. The shareholder resolution is a work in progress. What I would say is I'm working on advancing this effort, as is Wallace McMullen. And he is kind of the convener. So what I'm going to do is to ask him to put his contact email in the chat. If you have interest in helping us consider this and try to figure out how we're going to start a meaningful dialogue with LG&E, we are happy to have your thoughts and your prayers. Because it's going to be a tough slog, but we think it is definitely worth it, because we need everyone's cooperation, including the investor-owned utility that happens to have control over our service territory. So that's all I wanted to do, is to invite you into this effort and to let you know that we are working on it at Kipple, and we are inviting other climate action folks in Louisville to join us. And if you have any questions later, I'm happy to answer them. But for now, I just wanted you to know that this is going on. This advocacy effort will be a new prong of our work in the community. So thank you very much for your work thus far. I am thrilled to be able to join folks like you to try to bring about meaningful change in the energy transition here in Louisville. And let's go get them.
My
Thank you,
email
Elisa.
address is in the chat when people want it.
Thank you, Elisa. We very much appreciate the sponsorship of Kipple for our real good news broadcasts, and we appreciate your clear words about your priorities at the moment, and especially about the shareholder resolution for Louisville Gas and Electric, which is, of course, LG&E. So I'm going to move on to our next speaker, and Margaret Stewart, and after I've introduced her, she will speak for a few minutes, and then she will introduce Sam Avery, and he will handle the other speakers for the evening. Margaret grew up in Birmingham and has lived most of her adult life here in Louisville, working for many years on environmental and peace issues in both Frankfurt and Washington, D.C. She produced the colorful flyer we've been using for this series, and she also writes and reads poetry. She's currently active with 100% Renewable Energy Alliance at Louisville, which is real. Over to you, Margaret.
Thank you. In our ongoing effort to keep the issue of renewable energy front of mind for Metro Council, since our June event, we've had 4 more speakers deliver 3-minute talks at council meetings. Nancy Givens spoke in July, David Coit and I in August, and Wallace McMullen earlier this month. John Gage is scheduled to address the next council meeting. He was our opening musician. The more people the council hears from about renewable energy, the better. We aim to have 1 or 2 speakers at each meeting, and we encourage anyone else who would like to volunteer to address the council to contact Sam Avery at samuelavery@gmail.com, and that should be in the chat for more information. Louisville's energy comes currently 60% from coal, 37% from natural gas, 3% from hydro, and only 1% from solar. That adds up to 97% from fossil fuels. So we have a long way to go to attain the resolution's 2040 citywide goal of 100% renewable energy. But imagine, our air can be cleaner, new clean energy jobs can be created, and we can have a positive impact on the climate by going fossil free. Plus, solar power is now cheaper than coal, so we can save money by relying on renewables and, whenever possible, by reducing our energy demands. Thankfully, Louisville has begun taking some initial steps. Zachary Tyler, hired this February as energy manager for Louisville, has already identified $485,000 in energy saving measures for city operations. Louisville recently entered a partnership with NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. Owen Zinnerman, public manager for NREL, is helping identify actions to take as well as barriers to overcome here in Louisville as we pursue the resolution's first step goal of 100% clean renewable electricity for city operations by 2030. That's the first goal. The Metro Council Parks and Sustainability Committee specifically requested a report from the Office of Advanced Planning and Sustainability regarding NREL's efforts. That meeting occurred just this past Thursday. The good news is that Metro Council is finally paying attention to renewable energy issues and is considering possible actions to enable us to actually attain the goals of the 100% resolution. Our efforts to motivate council members and city government seem to be having an impact. Another encouraging development, the Office of Advanced Planning and Sustainability just this week initiated a brand new, non-governmental, easy-to-use website. Its purpose is to inform the general public about steps our city and our citizens are taking and can take to achieve 100% clean renewable energy here in Louisville. I encourage you all, check out this new site at 100%lou.com, and you'll see that in the chat. Other ideas our REAL team is working on include installation of a solar demonstration project on a public building, creation of a green bank, and promotion of a utility-scale solar project. You'll hear more about utility-scale solar shortly. Interestingly, just today, the Courier Journal featured a front-page article on solar farms. So check that out. We'll hear next from Sam Avery. Sam is a historian, scientist, philosopher, meditator, businessman, hippie farmer, author, activist, who has built the world's largest flea market and delivered his own child. But the important thing right now to know is that while Sam is good at figuring out details, like specific requirements for solar installations and such, Sam is also good at seeing and helping us all see the big picture of how we must act together if humanity is to have a chance of surviving the global climate crisis we now face. Sam?
Thank you, Margaret. I appreciate that, most of that anyway. And I really want to thank all of you for being there today, right now. It's just wonderful to see public participation in this stuff, because you are the people that are going to make it happen. This is not just about grumbling about the government or complaining about the utility companies. We need people who don't work for the government, who don't work for utility companies, who can see what's happening in the world, people who know about the hurricanes that are just rolling in from the Caribbean, one after another, people who can see that and are willing to do things about what they see. And those people are people who are here with us tonight. And it's just wonderful to see that. At REAL, Renewable Energy Alliance of Louisville, we have begun to look at three separate approaches as ways to actually implement the 100% resolution. We're going to do this thing. We have another 8.5 years left to do the first goal, which, as Margaret said, is 100% renewable electricity for city operations. And the three prongs are conservation, rooftop solar, and these three are interconnected, they're interrelated, they're interdependent. Any one of them is not enough. For instance, conservation. Conservation is obvious place to start. And if you look at, I've looked at a lot of figures on energy that the city buildings are using, and it's amazing how much they're using or wasting, really. It's absolutely crazy. And so that's going to make the load that we have to carry much lighter. But conservation isn't enough by itself. You can't just stop doing a bad thing. You've got to start doing a good thing. And so we're going to have to, at some point, begin to actually produce renewable energy. And the most obvious place to start for that would be rooftop solar, small installations on people's houses, on stores, barns, warehouses, whatever. And the thing to realize about rooftop solar is that the average American single-family house has all the roof space it needs to produce all of its energy for heating, cooling, lighting, refrigeration, cooking, even for powering 1 or 2 electric cars. So if everybody had solar, we wouldn't need utility scale solar. But the fact is everybody doesn't have solar, and a lot of the rooftops that they do have are not properly oriented for solar, or they have trees in the way, or chimneys or dormers or whatever. So we have to begin building our buildings to be solar ready. So when the time comes, we can put solar on all the buildings and so that most of them can produce their own energy. But even if we did that, there's still apartment buildings, office towers, public buildings, libraries, schools, stores, industrial installations, which may or may not be able to produce all their own electricity. So that's why we're going to need some utility scale electricity. So conservation is not enough. Rooftop solar is not enough. So we have to have some utility scale solar. Utility scale solar is too much. Because what I mean by that is if we just went with utility scale solar without the other two, we would need hundreds of acres just for the first part of this program, just to do city operations. And then when we get to the third goal, which would be by 2040, where we have renewable energy for the entire community, that would take thousands of acres, way too much land. So to keep the scale of utility solar down, so we're not using so much land, we have to go conservation and rooftop solar. So all of these three things work together. Now, the city of Louisville has already done a lot to fulfill its commitment to 100% renewable energy. You know, when we were lobbying the Metro Council to pass this thing, over and over again, we heard, well, you know, we pass resolutions all the time and we forget about them the next day. But since we passed it, it took us 1.5 years to pass it. And since we passed it in the last 1.5 years, we have actually seen the city take it seriously and actually begin to implement. And as Margaret mentioned, one of the things it's done is to hire a full-time energy manager Zach Tyler, who is working a lot, mostly now on conservation. The city is also has another program to electrify its automobile fleet. And the other thing that the city is doing, which Margaret also mentioned, is it has a contract now with the National Renewable Energy Laboratories in Colorado that people who are part of REAL, who are also city employees with the Office of Advanced Planning and Sustainability, they are working on the Louisville side of that contract. But this resolution is being taken seriously, and it's going to happen. And we're going to be there until it happens. I'll be getting on by the time 2040 rolls around. I might be getting a little old by then, but I intend to see that happen before but the problem we're finding out is that we can't do this alone as a city, because our utility company is, first of all, privately owned. We don't own it. The city does not own the utility company that we use. We can't even regulate it because regulation of utilities happens on the state level. And as you may know, there's one political party running things in Louisville. I can't remember its name, one of those parties. And then the other one, I get mixed up. It's another one in Frankfurt that's running things on the state level. And those two political parties seem to take their main priority is to undo what the other one is doing. So we're in a bind politically as far as actually making things happen. So we're going to have to be more involved on the state level. And we're also, this is a long-term thing. We're not worried about the next election or even the election after that. We're thinking long-term, what do we have to do on the state level to make these things happen? And so what we decided to do tonight is to get 3 people who are not from Louisville and who can help us understand things that they are doing on the state level. And I will introduce them next. There was one problem I had, though. You notice I disappeared a little while ago. In the shuffle of papers I went through, I had a little cheat sheet where I had Lane's and Nancy's, Kathy's introductory comments. They sent them to me and I insisted on that, and they wrote it all up, and then I forgot that I lost the paper. So what I'll do is say what I know, and then you can just say a little something to introduce yourself. Is Andy here yet? Did he ever show up?
Yes, Andy's here.
Oh, good. Okay. Thank you, Andy. Okay, Lane Boldman, somebody I've known for quite a while, is the executive director of the Kentucky Conservation Committee, and which has been around since 1975. And I remember back that far. I was actually active in that group at that time. And Lane will talk to us particularly about something that's happening in Kentucky now, which is called merchant solar, which is large scale, utility scale solar installations that are not actually being installed by utility companies, but are being installed by private developers in an attempt to sell electricity to utility companies. So it's a huge thing going on. It's just starting up right now. And I will talk a little bit later on, if we have time, about Louisville's utility scale solar installation. But before that, Lane, please introduce yourself briefly and tell us about merchant solar in Kentucky.
Thanks, Sam. I appreciate the invitation to address you all, and I love the work that 100% Real has been doing. Kentucky Conservation Committee has been around since the 70s. What we do is we provide lobbying capacity to organizations and to our own members. So we have two lobbyists every legislative session. We watch legislative issues on behalf of the public. The solar issue has been one that we've been working on pretty steadily for the last 7 years now. The last previous years focused on net metering, but now this merchant solar has really been ramping up. And this work on solar, we have been doing an alliance with what used to be called the Kentucky Sustainable Energy Alliance, which is a coalition of groups, is now the Solar Advocacy Network, which Catherine will talk about. But I will share my screen and go through some of the things that are going on. And also, if you go to our website, kyconservation.org, you will see what I'll be talking about, a citizen's guide to merchant solar. We also have a climate pamphlet that I believe now contains some of your fine work that the city is doing within it. And you can see our legislative summaries on our website. So I will share screen. And can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to present this now. So merchant solar, you get your solar from, you get your power from LG&E KU, obviously. But merchant solar, as we were saying, is solar that's being sold on the open market. Now, there are some situations where Louisville has entered into certain agreements to purchase some power from these merchant facilities. Hold on a minute, let me get this where I can actually see. So the way solar is deployed in Kentucky through your regulated utilities, like I said, LG&E KU, through merchant plants on the open market, and through distributed solar residential. That's my preferred way of getting solar, is through my solar panels on my garage. But as this market is building out, then I take the view that all solar right now is good. We need it all at the moment, but it needs to be well regulated. So merchant solar are merchant power plants that sell power to competitive wholesale markets and are financed by investors. They're typically large ground-mounted systems by non-utilities for sale on the wholesale market, and they have a different kind of exposure and risk in their investment. So you have the generator, the reseller, and the end user. And the reason they're coming to Kentucky now is, first off, there's already been pretty robust development in other states, in Ohio, in Virginia, but they're coming to Kentucky now. I'd say about the last 2 years, they've really started to come into this state because we are a part of two large wholesale electricity markets. You'll hear PJM and MISO. They stand for Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland market, and the Mid-Continent Independent Systems Operator market. And we have some other markets, Tennessee Valley Authority, for example, and then you get your power from the regulated markets, LG&E KU. But right now, particularly in the PJM market, it's a very hot area for solar development, for merchant solar. So, as Sam alluded to, which is best? Is it best to get your solar from regulated utility scale? Is it best to get it from merchant plants? Is it best to get it from residential? I think right now all is needed. Kentucky doesn't have a renewable portfolio standard, which sets goals for increasing the production of clean energy. So for right now, we're going to take all we can get, right? So I think it's becoming clear, though, that a mix of large solar with storage and distributed rooftop solar can be complementary. They shouldn't be competitive. There's been some recent studies, one recently from Vibrant Energy, that suggests that building out distributed solar and energy storage in combination with distributed solar can be really beneficial to the grid. And some of the work that other organizations here have been doing on the LG&E rate case have helped emphasize that there are benefits to the grid for distributed solar. But people would be surprised. I think even people that follow solar developments pretty closely in the state, I think we're pretty surprised to see that there have been so many proposals coming into Kentucky in such a very short time for these large scale open market plants. Currently, we have 28 proposals in some stage of process in the PSC right now. And there's many others that are in development that aren't even before the PSC. So there are ones that we don't really know about yet, except for news reporting. So you can see from this map they really go all over the place. The suns are the ones that are actual developments. The green areas are areas that people have been looking at for developments. So you can see it's really all over the place. So some of the companies that have been coming in, we have a lot of new players in this market. Just a few names: Carolina Solar, GeneX Solar, National Grid Renewables, Novus Renewables, Oakhurst Energy, Silicon Ranch, Savion Energy. I know there's many more names I haven't even put here. Big companies. So these merchant solar projects start out as a decision between the local property owner and a developer. So this is really a transaction between a private party and the developer. But they have to address local zoning and planning issues. And then once those are resolved, the Kentucky State Board of Electric Generation, which is basically the PSC plus additional members, and that includes some local representation, takes care of the application, requirements for public hearings, etc. So it's a multi-level process, but it does start with the local property owner first. Now that's where we're running into some issues. We need to work with these communities. Let me make that a little smaller. Okay, because what's been happening in Kentucky? Well, Kentucky has spent years dealing with coal. And in coal power, a lot of communities felt like they were exploited for coal and exploited for energy use. So here we are now in a situation where we're getting clean energy, but there's also the same issues that need to be addressed or contended with. We need to be careful to make sure that we're not taking advantage of communities for the sake of getting this clean energy. Oops, hold on. So we have an opportunity to transition to clean energy quickly with these large scale plants, but the communities really need to be part of the process, and we need to protect those citizens. So some of the questions that have been raised, and the reason I started digging into this topic, KCC has been looking at this topic for about a year now, is that we saw the potential for there being conflict among environmentalists, because we have advocates for clean energy, but we also have advocates for land conservation. And I saw these on a track of becoming really conflicted. And that's happened in some cases in some communities. And the questions that get raised are: who controls the projects? How will they impact the community? Who gets the money or the jobs? Will it displace farmland or wildlife? What will happen to property values? How will these impact a view shed if you moved to the country to get a wonderful view and suddenly your neighbor wants to put up a solar farm? What's your rights? How noisy are these operations? Will the land recover for future use for farming? And how do you dispose of the panels? And so these are the main questions that we've been hearing as these projects evolve. The biggest one of these, of course, is just overall land use, taking land out of productive farming. Some communities, one of the first ones we heard from that ran into this conflict was Clark County. They were really concerned about the proliferation of solar farms that would compete with their prime agricultural land. And so they started raising concerns very early on, thinking this was going to be unchecked development. How many more projects will there be? They were raising these questions. Now, some solar companies are trying to address that by doing what's called dual use or agrivoltaic installations, where they try to integrate pollinator plantings, beneficial plants, sheep. There's been some experiments with cattle. But that's still early in development in a lot of cases. A lot of these are still demonstration plants. So the people in Clark County have been really opposed to this development. And communities have a right to have the planning and zoning the way they want it, right? So that's been an ongoing conversation. This is some photos I took just today up in Mason County. That's up near Maysville. They're having a really interesting debate because there's quite a lot of people that actually want the solar farms. And there's several that do not. And so all along US 68, you're going to see these signs going back and forth. Say yes, say no, harvest the sun, do not have panels on farmland. So this has gotten quite interesting. Those weren't up about a month ago. I was at one of their public hearings a month ago to hear out the community's concerns. Most I heard from do want the development. The organization that's against the development, they were also against a wind farm development in about 6 years ago. So they're just anti-renewables. So what we're trying to do is have open conversations with as many communities as we can about these conflicts. We're encouraging solar developers to avoid these prime agricultural lands, try to look more at brownfields. We're asking the state to provide more incentives for brownfields. There's 3 projects that are proposed for mine sites, but there's issues there as well. But they should all be using best practices to maintain soils. Now, there was actually a hearing this week. I know Sam watched the recordings of this, but there was a hearing this week on industrial solar or merchant solar. And the figures for how much farmland was going to be used were kind of all over the place, depending upon who was presenting. But I'll go with the numbers that the Energy and Environment Cabinet put together, which was developable sites within Kentucky would amount to about 0.23 of agricultural land in the state. Now, I personally think any risk to agricultural land is a problem, but I also think that it's really up to the communities on how they want their planning to work. But we've given some guidance in our merchant solar guide, certain things, certain best practices like reducing the removal of topsoil during construction, soil restoration during decommissioning, cover plantings, and water management to reduce soil compaction. So last year, since we watched the legislature, last year there was a bill filed, Senate Bill 266, from Senator Steve West, who's out in the Clark County region. And he introduced a really aggressive bill to amend state laws to prohibit any development of solar, including rooftop solar, on any property that is taxed as agricultural. Now, I spent some time talking to him later, and this was basically a protest bill. He just saw that these developments were coming in quickly. Not all of them were taking the time to really work with the communities, and he just wanted to slow this process down. I don't anticipate such a bill this year, but there are 2 areas that really do need some tweaking in the statutes. There needs to be some adjustments on how we decommission these installations when they're done, make sure there's adequate funding to take care of restoring land to productive use, and requirements for transfers. Some of these companies that are coming in basically just start the process and then they hand off to another developer. And so that really needs a little better oversight. Right now, all the oversight is being handled by the siting board that's part of the Public Service Commission. And they've been doing a pretty good job, but it would be nice to have these in statute. So I mentioned the solar guide that we have. You're welcome to request these. We can send them out. We've been trying to get them out to communities. We've distributed about 200 of these so far in communities where these debates are happening, just so they can get basic information. Because right now, the people in these communities look at all solar the same way. And that's the other dilemma for us as clean energy advocates, is we don't want to see, rooftop solar tainted because somebody's upset with merchant solar, right? So we want to make sure that people understand the differences, what their rights are, and what actions they can take. So if you have any questions about this, this guide is also downloadable on our website along with other materials. Just email me directly and visit our website and you can learn more about it. Okay.
Thank you, Lane.
Yep.
And I would say that if you're interested in environmental issues of any kind in the state of Kentucky, the KCC, the Kentucky Conservation Committee, is an organization to be part of, because they actually lobby the legislature for good environmental legislation.
And we've been making the rounds with senators right now about these issues. So so that's going on right now.
Right. Very effective group. Thank you very much. And I will say also that if anybody wants any questions, if it has any questions, to just write them up in the chat, and we'll try to fit in as many as we can. If anything I said or Lane said, let us know. Our next speaker is Andy McDonald, who, again, I lost my cheat sheet, but I know Andy for a long time. He's been around in the solar community in Louisville, I mean, in Kentucky for a long time. He's, I know he was on the board of the Kentucky Solar Energy Society for a while. And right now he's working for a group called Earth Tools. And I know them because I was the one who installed their initial solar, 8 or 10 years ago. And Andy has since added on to that and probably improved my work there, and is working for a part of the Solar Earth Tools, which is called Apogee. Andy, if you have anything to add to that, please do. And Andy is a resident of Frankfurt, and he's come up with some wonderful ideas as to how to do Frankfurt with renewable energy. They have one advantage over Louisville. They own their municipal utility company. We don't own LG&E, but Frankfurt does own. So they can do a lot of things we can't do. Okay, Andy, take it away, please.
Well, thanks so much, Sam and Paul and everyone here at the meeting. I appreciate the chance to talk with you all. As Sam said, I'm the director of Apogee Climate and Energy Transitions, which is a program of Earth Tools, a company based in Owen County, north of Frankfurt. And I do solar energy project design, consulting, and also a fair amount of advocacy and educational work around clean energy issues. And over the past year, I'm working with my friend Walt Baldwin, who's on the call today. We prepared a proposal for the city of Frankfurt, the community of Frankfurt, which I'll share with you today. I'll share my screen, and before I continue, how much time should I expect to present for?
Keep it within 8 or 10 minutes if you can, please.
Okay, I'll do my best. So I will share my screen here. And so Walt and I have prepared a proposal for, we issued a report in March where we analyzed the potential for building a solar facility within Franklin County that would supply 100% of the net electricity needs for the city of Frankfurt, Franklin County government, the Frankfurt Independent Schools, and Franklin County Public Schools. And as Sam said, Frankfurt has a municipal electric utility, the Frankfurt Plant Board, and that gives Frankfurt certain opportunities that many other parts of the state don't have. So the proposal we presented is that a 20 megawatt solar facility located within Franklin County would supply 100% of the net electricity needs of these 4 public agencies. And it could be built using a solar power purchase agreement between these agencies and a private solar developer. And based upon the pricing for solar PPAs in Kentucky, the Southeast, and the Midwest, we based our report on an estimate of a solar PPA of 4.5 cents per kilowatt hour. That would be the charge for the solar energy to the 4 agencies. That's a substantial overestimate, a very conservative estimate, because, for example, LG&E's most recent solar PPA came in at 2.7 cents per kilowatt hour. But we didn't want to oversell the potential savings to these agencies. So 4.5 cents per kilowatt hour also represents, that's 1/2 of the retail rate that these agencies are paying. And so using that assumed rate, these agencies would save a combined $1.2 million a year on their annual electricity bills. And so the way that we propose this would work would be to have the local municipal utility enable virtual net metering, which would allow a single, well, 1 or 2 centrally located large facilities. So a utility scale project, but located in the local community where it's going to be used. And the power from that single facility would be allocated to the accounts for all of the meters of the participating customers. Under normal net metering, the solar array is located on the building being served and connected to the meter being served. And so it offsets the consumption of the customer using it directly. Under virtual net metering, the energy produced by the solar array doesn't have to be connected to the building or the meter that it's being served. And the crediting is an administrative process. And the private developer would own, operate, and maintain the solar facility for the life of the project. There would be no upfront cost or ongoing maintenance costs for the participating agencies or for the taxpayers. This is a unique opportunity for Frankfurt because we have a municipal utility. Municipal utilities in Kentucky are not regulated by the Public Service Commission. The utility is regulated by a board that's appointed by the mayor and approved by the city commission. It's a 5-member board of local people who are customers of the utility. And so, whereas Louisville has this goal of getting 100% of its electricity, of its energy from renewables, it's rather difficult. It's more challenging to figure out how to get LG&E to participate in that. In Frankfurt, if we can persuade the local utility that it's in their interest, that it's in the interest of the community they serve, then we hope that we can ultimately get this project developed. Also, if schools around the state are limited in how they can use solar energy by the state's net metering law. And in fact, there are schools, for example, in Lexington, that have systems that are greater than the net metering cap of 45 kilowatts. And they're only getting the wholesale rate for the excess power they generate on their own buildings, because KU won't let them net meter beyond 30 kilowatts, which was the cap when they installed their system. Additionally, municipal utilities exist to serve their communities, not shareholders. That's another reason why a project like this should be attractive. And so the benefits to the community, in addition to the significantly reduced operating costs for these agencies, which are all supported by taxpayers, so all the benefits also go to the residents and the taxpayers in our county, there would be the local economic development of probably $25 to $35 million for building the facility. Carbon emissions would be reduced by over 23,000 tons per year. There'd be public health benefits of reducing carbon emissions and emissions from the coal plants that currently serve Frankfurt. And Frankfurt would be demonstrating its leadership on clean energy and economic development. So in our report, we also provided a detailed analysis of how building solar within the distribution grid within Franklin County would reduce peak demand charges, transmission charges, and wholesale energy costs for the local utility. And a major part of our report is this analysis, which you can find our report at our website, which is apogeeclimate.org. And I don't have time to go into it in detail. But in essence, the local utility buys all of its power from a wholesale power supplier, the KYMEA, and they pay charges based upon their monthly peak demand. The solar facility would reduce that peak demand and therefore reduce the wholesale power costs for the utility. And the total savings are in the order of about $1.8 million per year to the utility. There are also benefits of hedging against future carbon pricing, if and when there should be a regulation of carbon emissions. There's also reducing the risk in the power supply for the municipal utility. It reduces pressure on the KYMEA, their power supplier, to build new fossil plants if their customers' usage is reduced so dramatically. And now it should be noted, and we've been in discussion with the local, our local leaders and local utility about the fact that the utility would also see reduced revenue because they would see about 30 million kilowatt hours per year of reduced sales to these 4 agencies. And as a result, their revenue would go down by about $2.6 million a year. So that's offset partially by about $1.8 million in peak demand and transmission and wholesale energy cost savings. But there's still a net revenue decline of about $800,000 a year to the utility. However, we've pointed out that if there were a carbon price of $40 per ton, that would exceed $800,000 per year. And so our report discusses how the benefits on the whole, if you see them also as an insurance policy against future risk, provide an overall net benefit to the community. And so I will conclude there. At present, we are in discussions with each of the agencies that we've presented this to. And we're in dialogue between these agencies and the utility. And currently there's no commitment on any party's part, but we're still hopeful that the project will move forward. So I appreciate your time very much. If any of you have any questions after the meeting, feel free to reach out to me by email next week or anytime. I'd be glad to talk with you.
Thank you, Andy. And we appreciate that very much. And again, if people have questions for Andy or Lane or Kathy coming up here, then just write them into the chat box and we'll see if we can squeeze them in. Our next speaker is Kathy Clement, and she's a member of the Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, which is a big statewide organization which is involved in energy and environment issues, among other things. And I've been a member of that for a long time. Haven't been as active as Kathy has been, but the other thing Kathy will speak about is a group called the Kentucky Solar Advocacy Network, which is an organization of organizations. Rather than have all of the different organizations have their own lobbying branch in Frankfurt, the idea of the advocacy network is to get us all to work together and to point in the same direction there. So Kathy will explain something about that. And again, Kathy, I'm sorry that I lost my introductory materials for you, but so say a little something about yourself and then tell us about the advocacy network, please.
Okay. Yeah, there wasn't much that you lost. So I'm a retired psychology professor from EKU. And when I retired, I got involved actively with Kentuckians for the Commonwealth and then the Solar Advocacy Network. So I will share my screen, hopefully, and tell you about some of the work the network is doing. So let's try to do this. And all right, I assume that's working.
Good.
All right, so as Sam said, the Kentucky Solar Advocacy Network is a network of organizations and citizens and energy professionals, and we've listed some of the organizations there. And these organizations differ in many ways, but overlap in their goal of wanting Kentucky to move much more quickly toward an equitable, clean energy future. Our mission is to educate around energy equity and renewable energy issues, be a trusted voice for the public and for decision makers to listen to, and to increase citizen engagement in energy decision-making. So our belief is that in order to achieve our goal, citizens need to become much more aware of how the energy system works, who the players are, who controls and governs the system, such as the PSC and the legislature, how they can have a voice in it, and we need to increase how receptive the power players are to that voice. So some of our current priorities: preserving net metering, which I assume this group has heard a lot about, a PSC, Public Service Commission reform campaign, and a solar storytelling project. So I'll talk about each of those. I'm assume you all are familiar with net metering, but it was a policy, I believe, established in 2008. Andy can correct me. Gave solar panel owners a one-to-one credit for energy they fed to the grid. So if they fed it in the day, they could get credit for it against the energy they use at night. For several years, KU and LG&E and other utilities in Kentucky tried to end the policy, and they succeeded in 2019 with the passage of Senate Bill 100. And what that did is that it left it, to the PSC, to the Public Service Commission, is now in charge of deciding on a fair rate of credit for excess energy rooftop solar owners' fee of that one-to-one credit. And they are to decide that for each utility that brings a case. 2 cases have been brought so far by Kentucky Power Company in Eastern Kentucky, and as you know, by KU and LG&E. And they want to credit, or KPC wanted and KU LG&E want to credit people at the wholesale rate of approximately 2.5 cents a kilowatt hour instead of the retail rate. So our network has worked to oppose the anti-net metering legislation. They organized significant public turnout to a PSC special hearing to discuss implementation of SB 100, and we hired an expert to testify. And that was important because the PSC actually issued some good orders as a result of that hearing, specifically that they would weigh the costs and benefits of rooftop solar, and that they would hire experts to help them make their decisions. And then the network has participated in the 2 rate cases. There's 2 ways for the public to be heard in Public Service Commission rate cases. One is less formally, and that's by submitting written comments and giving oral comments at public hearings. So our network wrote talking points and drove in a lot of public comments for both of these cases. Then the other way for the public to be heard is through the formal intervention process. And that is where lawyers and experts become part of the official legal proceeding. To be part of that intervention process, you have to get permission from the PSC. You need a lawyer and ideally have expert witnesses, and it costs a lot of money. So members of the network have intervened. The Sierra Club intervened. Also, 3 members of the network, Kentucky Solar Energy Society, Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, and Mountain Association became joint interveners by Tom Fitzgerald from the Kentucky Resources Council. We pulled resources and hired 2 experts. I've listed the Attorney General here crossed out because the Attorney General is technically supposed to represent the public at rate cases. Our current Attorney General did help lower the size of rate increases in the Kentucky Power case and the KU LG&E case, but they have fully sided with the utilities in trying to eliminate net metering and reduce the credit for fed-in solar. So they have not represented the public with respect to solar. So in Kentucky Power case, a decision was made, we had a good outcome. Solar customers are reimbursed about 88% of the retail rate for energy they feed into the grid. So rooftop solar can still serve in the Eastern region. The KULG&E rate case, a decision should be made next week about that. And no idea what that will be. Okay, other thing the network has been doing is a major effort is the PSC reform campaign. And I believe Wallace has already presented to this group about that. In any case, the goal of that campaign is to create the conditions where we have an energy system that is conducive to the goals of renewable energy and energy democracy. And given our legislature, we have decided we're going to work toward that goal through the PSC rather than going right to the legislature. Some of the short-term efforts are to engage more people in the PSC process, to help people understand what the PSC does and how they can play a role, to change the internal policies so that it's easier for the public to understand what's going on at the PSC and in rate cases. Because right now there's an extreme imbalance where the utilities are very well represented at rate cases, and the public has a very kind of tiny voice in rate cases, especially if they don't have the money to hire an intervener. We would like to change the Public Service Commission's mission and priorities. So they are charged with protecting the public interest. They currently have a pretty narrow definition of what that is. So we would like to expand their conception of the public interest to include affordability, health and climate, environment, and so on. And we'd like to encourage the PSC to develop a long-term vision for Kentucky energy infrastructure. So then long-term, all of that needs to be handled at the legislative level. So one of the important efforts would be to get what's called an intervener compensation fund. So this would improve public representation in rate cases. So advocacy groups could apply to get money to hire the lawyers and experts to intervene in rate cases. And this would help address the imbalance because the utilities can just spend as much money as they want on rate cases and they pass that right along to ratepayers. So to address the imbalance, we need to have a way for the public to get funding to intervene. We'd like to see the legislation mandate that the PSC consider affordability, climate, and health. And ultimately, we need better utility models, such as municipalization, so we don't have the perpetual conflict between the interests of the public and the interests of the utilities. The last project that I want to mention is our solar stories project. So the utilities like to put out the narrative that only wealthy, urban, white people can benefit from solar and can afford solar. So Kara Cooper, our fabulous staff member, has created a space on the Kentucky Solar Energy Society website with solar stories that combat that narrative. And she's interviewed churches, individuals, nonprofits, small businesses throughout the state about their solar projects. And she's posted information about them on the website. And she's created this interactive map that you can go to, click on the place on the map and find out about the nature of the installation at the places on the map. And that is ongoing. As more installations happen, that will get added to over time. So if you want to learn more about the Solar Advocacy Network, you can sign up for the email. We also have sign up to get the emails we send out, that Kara sends out. And we also have a presence on Facebook at Solar Kentucky. And that's it. And
Okay.
thank you for having me.
Thank you, Kathy. We appreciate that. And we're grateful to have this organization that is tying together the efforts of a lot of organizations like REAL and doing things on the state level that we have to begin to pay more attention to. I think it's fascinating also that the Public Service Commission is a 3-member panel that is appointed by the governor. And so we have, it's interesting that on the Public Service Commission, we have some very favorable people who are looking towards renewable energy as a goal.
Yes, so now is the time to strike.
Exactly.
Thank you, frozen.
They're much less likely to be at all responsive at this point, but that will change. That will change in time. Okay, in the remaining time, I would like to mention briefly a utility scale solar installation that REAL has proposed for Louisville for the first stage of our implementation. And that is an installation of about 84 megawatts, which is that it's like 500 acres of panels, maybe even more. It's huge, but it's smaller than some of the installations which are proposed in other parts of the state. So this is not something coming from Mars here. This is something that's already happening around us. This installation, if the city were to do it itself, it would cost about $109 million. It would involve 218,000 panels, about 500 acres, and it would pay for itself in about 8.5 years. That's it. If we was able to use this to offset the usage of the city government. So it's plain that this is a lot cheaper than coal and even of gas. It's the thankfully now we have the added incentive of the market is on our side. It used to be that if you wanted to have solar, you had if you want to pay less, then you better go solar in the long run. The problem is that we have a lot of existing infrastructure that is fossil infrastructure that the owners of that infrastructure want to keep using it. And I understand that. And I'm thankful to LG&E for all it's done to provide heat and light and electricity for generations in Louisville. But if they continue to insist on burning fossil fuel, we're going to have to counter that one way or another. And that will be through conservation, rooftop solar, and utility scale solar. But my question to some of our speakers here tonight, and you probably haven't, this might be a little bit unfair, but if we are to pursue this route to try to get the city of Louisville either to build its own utility scale solar installation or to have a solar developer come and build it for us, which is more likely, and pay them what's called a PPA or a power purchase agreement. If we were to do this, the problem is that LG&E would not have to hook up to it the way things stand right now. LG&E doesn't have to do anything it doesn't want to do as long as it can get it through the Public Service Commission. So my question to each of our speakers, if you can have a little something to say about this, how would you recommend we proceed in Louisville if we want to change the whole basis, the whole monopolistic way that we are provided with energy in Louisville. What should we do? Any volunteers? Lane, do you have a comment about that?
I was going to say, I'd be curious to hear Andy's take on the limitations since LG&E KU does have certain rights as their territory, if he's run into that. But my first thought was, if you do like Andy did, working this up as a proposal where people can see the figures. I mean, even as a theoretical project, I think at least that gets the figures in front of people, and they can see that the comparison of working through LG&E KU versus working some other way. But that's my first thought.
Well, I certainly see the challenge of trying to develop it within the existing policy limitations. But Lane is correct that an analysis could be done to show that if this was built within LG&E KU's territory, you could show potentially the savings that LG&E would gain from having such a large facility, reducing peak demand and transmission costs for them. And if only as a hypothetical model, it might at least be a tool you could use with legislators or the commission to show that this would have advantages to the ratepayers. That's one thought. You mentioned that NREL is doing some consulting for the city. Is this project within the scope of what they're looking at?
Not immediately. They're concentrating on conservation right now, and they will get into rooftop and utility scale solar as time goes on. But they are committed to showing Louisville. They don't really tell us what to do, but they come up with recommendations, and they're already familiar with us. I've talked to them about this particular plan, and they're.
May I ask a question? My question is that I think, Andrew, you said something about LG&E's PPA being 2.7 cents a kilowatt hour. I'm wondering if that's Toyota's PPA, and you don't have to say yes or no. But if it is, I'm wondering about the value of trying to come together as the city of Louisville and suggest that we know what the price per kilowatt hour is for Toyota, and that they should be willing to do the same PPA for the city of Louisville for their amount of energy that they are bringing to the table that LG&E serves. I'm wondering if that would be any help at all, because if that, again, I don't know if that's Toyota's PPA or whose PPA it is, but clearly if people have enough clout in terms of the amount of energy that they are buying from LG&E, then it is possible to sway them toward a PPA, and they may control it, but 2.7 cents a kilowatt hour is not a bad price for energy.
I believe that PPA is with the Toyota and DuPont that I referenced. However, one thing I'm unsure of is the 2.7 cents, they may be billing Toyota and DuPont a premium on top of their standard retail rate to get that 2.7 cents. So, in Frankfurt, part of our argument was our local agencies and taxpayers could save money while using 100% solar energy, and the utility would benefit too. But if we set aside the concern with saving money, the city of Louisville could conceivably just develop a PPA through LG&E KU and pay a cost premium to get all of their electricity sourced from solar, just like Toyota and DuPont are doing. There are a number of different ways they could do that. And since we know that, a solar on this scale is being developed for around 2.7 cents. If Metro Louisville was willing to pay an additional 2.7 cents per kilowatt hour, then they could, in a straightforward way, supply all their electricity from solar. But more ideally, what I'd like to see would be if this could also be achieved with cost savings to the local community.
I want to point to the chat. Walt has been making some comments on this, and we might want to invite Walt to respond directly. But my question was, what were the regulatory hurdles because of the current arrangement with LG and EKU with Louisville, and he's been chiming in on that.
Yeah, well, we do know that there is a Kentucky statute which delineates how a community can municipalize its utility. That can be done. It's legal, but it'd be difficult. It'd be a popular vote and so forth and so on. But yes, that is, Walt, you want to have something to say about that, Walt? He was with us, but
sorry, I had to get all my stuff unmuted there.
Just a minute, but go ahead.
Sure. The only comment I would make is what I made inside the chat is that right now there are only regulatory barriers in front of Louisville to be able to reach its 100% goals. The biggest, cleanest way to move forward, certainly not the easiest, is municipalization, which makes it a blank slate for Louisville, and they could pursue whatever they wanted to do for their energy supply, and would open the way for them to join MISO, have access to much greater resources, and also resources to generate power whenever local solar gets built isn't generating. But outside of something like that, changes to the current state law to allow retail PPAs, besides those two things, there really aren't any clear paths forward for Louisville. So I guess the short of that is the only clear paths forward require some sort of regulatory change. One interesting thing that Louisville might consider that could help it in the rooftop area that would be of larger scale than just a normal net metering installation is that there isn't anything that precludes, say, a large industrial customer that has a primary meter from installing a larger solar array behind their system that exceeds the current net metering caps. So via a rec trading system or something like that, Louisville could certainly look at expanding or developing more solar in cooperation with those industrial clients to get it at a better price point than you would get in just smaller, multi-kilowatt systems on individual rooftops.
Right.
But municipalization is clearly the most economic way to go, but certainly not an easy way to go.
Margaret, did you have a question?
Just quickly, my understanding is that NREL has designated that it will explore this avenue and provide data and analysis to the city about municipalization.
They did. They're pursuing two paths. One is to help with the initial goal of meeting the metro government's load, and that would be either to purchase a portion of the system to serve the load, to municipalize a portion of it from LG&E, or potentially just to overbuild a new distribution system to serve their load. And then also on their radar is looking at what the costs and benefits would be around the purchasing the entire distribution system and municipalizing the whole city.
Well, thank you, Walt, and thank you, everybody. We're going to turn it back over to Graham and then to John Gage, who's got another song for us, an original song that he's going to sing for our close. Graham, are you still there?
Yes, I am, Sam. Thank you. And I'd like to give a big thank you to all the participants who presented us with a raft of difficult stuff tonight to think about. Elisa and Margaret and Sam and Lane and Andy and Kathy, thank you, and Walt now, I thank you very much for your presentations. We've got a lot to chew on. I was just sitting here in the last few minutes thinking that our preeminent exemplar of activism is really Martin Luther King. And he had an essay once on having a tough mind and a tender heart. And he was citing a biblical verse talking about being as cunning as serpents and as innocent as doves, a tough mind and a tender heart. Well, that's a good guide for us. And you can see tonight that we really need some tough minds here. There's a lot of thorny and difficult, fraught issues, and difficult to even understand sometimes. They're not very clear. Maybe we can clear up some of the mysteries in our next program, because we're hoping that you'll join us in another couple of months in early December when we have another issue of Real Good News. So I would like to thank all of you who are with us tonight and all the people who participated both on camera and behind the scenes. Thank you especially to Marilyn Stoner and Rhodey Streeter again for their technical help, and for Paul Westland, who worked so hard to bring this program on air and perhaps pulled out a few hairs in the process as he was dealing with technical issues. So as Sam said, we have the great good fortune to have John Gage with us in person again tonight. And we do like to finish sharp at 8:30, so I'm going to hand it over to John for our closing song. Are you there, John? Let's go.
I think I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. This has been a fascinating time, and I've learned so much, and I want to thank everyone for your commitment and the efforts that you put into making these enlightening moments happen. And it's good for an old folk singer like me. But in the beginning of 1994, my partner and I, at that time, had a tract of land in Metcalfe County, about 125 acres. And we decided we wanted to work in that community, a rural setting, and to try to suggest alternative building materials, alternative energy. So anyway, we built a straw bale cabin on our land. I bought 350 bales of straw, bales of hay from a local farmer, and everybody came out, the TV station came out, and we, over a period of time, built a cabin, installed solar panels and gray water treatment, and just trying to suggest different ways of going about the way we use energy and the way we can lower our impact on the earth. And it was just almost exactly this time of year. As we were working, it was harvest time, and coming home, we'd work every weekend on the land there, and coming home later in the evening on a Sunday evening, there was an incredible harvest moon hanging, and it was such an inspiration to me, so beautiful. And so this song began to form. There was also one other person known pretty much throughout the county as Uncle Houston, and he was a sort of keeper of ancient wisdom. He was almost 90 years old, and just as I was concluding writing this song, Uncle Houston passed away. And so I dedicate this song to Uncle Houston, there in Metcalfe County, and the whole Houston family. And sing it for us who are making such an effort. There's a full moon rising over Metcalfe County. Fields are ripe and full of their bounty. There are heroes in the hollers, scholars of the earth, whose weathered hands have tilled the soil, whose souls have given birth to the stories of a people. What a life is worth. We're thankful for their simple words of truth.
There's a full moon rising over Metcalf County. Fields are ripe and full of their bounty, with a million stars to reap when the harvest moon is hung. And words our hearts will keep when our songs are all sung. We'll share our destiny, living in harmony with the rhythm of the land, an ancient melody, singing from the spirit. In the stillness you can hear it as it calls to us all to be free. There's a full moon rising over Metcalf County. Fields are ripe, full of their bounty, with a million stars to reap when the harvest moon is hung. And words our hearts will keep when our songs are all sung. Oh, the path that lay before us, chartered by our kin, leads us through the forest to our place of origin. And when our course is run into the setting sun, we'll leave for others what we have begun. There's a full moon rising over Metcalf County. Fields are ripe, full of their bounty, a million stars to reap when the harvest moon is hung. The words our hearts will keep when our songs are all sung. When the harvest moon is hung, we'll have words our hearts will keep and new songs to be sung.
Thank you, John. You're a gem.
Metcalf County.
Thank you for anchoring our feet in the real stuff. That's it from us. Hope to see you all again with more real good news in early December. Goodbye.